Présidente Association Mauricienne Femmes Chefs d'entreprise qui se cache, Rima, who prefers to be one of the backbenchers today.
Not so much.
Yes. Members of Middlesex University, District Governor, incoming District Governor of the Rotary Club for the region, Mr. Bernard Youngstown. Members of HR Cafe, if I can call you this now, because we have quite a few regulars who are with us. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to you. It's been a while. I think it's been, our last edition was in October. Very much overdue. I apologize for that. It's just that, as you know, the workforce hasn't been too easy. And Talent Lab being an HR management company, I think we've had our sleeves pretty much rolled up over the past few months. So you will forgive us for being quiet, but we hope to restart and renew with our editions, at least 2 before the year ends, hopefully. We'll see how this one goes. If there's not much collateral damage after this session today, we'll surely have another one sometime in September. A promising theme. You will ask me why this theme. You will ask Talent Lab or maybe your friend sitting next to you. It's a vague theme. It's something that really isn't, c'est assez abstrait comme thème. It comes from a thought process and experience interacting with some of you, our clients, our counterparts in the HR profession, in the leadership profession. There's a lot of turmoil. There's a lot of unrest happening at the moment. Whenever I talk to a colleague in HR, we always moan, we always complain. There's something happening. I see Natalie from Security One nodding. I know the challenges you face. It does seem that there is a mismatch somewhere. What type of mismatch? Is it us not understanding the other side of the table? Or is it there's an evolution, there's a wave that has started and us, HR professionals, business leaders, are not quick enough to catch that tide? So the session of today, forgive me for this, is going to be quite an umbrella session. We may not be able to unpack everything in detail, but really after this session, what will happen is that we will pick and choose maybe one or more sub-themes and then take this up in the next sessions, forthcoming sessions. Well, enough of me talking. I think I do tend to talk a lot when I can, when I get the limelight, so forgive me for that. Without further ado, I'd like to ask the person who actually believes in HR Cafe a lot, the person who's welcomed us on her beautiful campus, to join me here just to say a few words of welcome to you. Marie, Professor Marie, please join us.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Middlesex University, Mauritius. I hope that you enjoy our hospitality today, but also enjoy our campus. I'm looking forward to a very good conversation. I know it's always a good conversation when we're in this particular theatre. So I know that as a learning institution, we welcome questions, and as a panel, we will be welcoming questions. And Adela, thank you so much for choosing Middlesex. It's fantastic to have you here. And I think, hopefully, we will all walk out of here with some insight. So welcome again to Middlesex University. There's a couple of my colleagues here if you want to know more about our campus. I'll just say 2 lines because I'm from a marketing background and I always use an opportunity as an advert break. So just to tell you, we offer high quality UK qualifications in the fields of law, business, management, advertising, PR, branding, psychology, and I can go on, computer sciences. Next door you will see there's a hackathon happening. So if you see a lot of very exciting students, they're busy with a hackathon, developing a website for a fitness app. They're going to be here for the next 24 hours. So if you want to recruit, let's go next door. There's more than 100 computer specialists next door, and that includes some international teams that have been joining us. So please If you have any questions afterwards, you're very welcome to ask me or any of my colleagues. Welcome again. I hope this is going to be a fantastic event. Thank you, Edina.
Thank you so much. So allow me to introduce her as our first panelist as well. Professor Marie has immense exposure in academia. She's worked before being in Mauritius. She was at the University of South Africa as a professor in strategic management. So we would like to hear from your experience there as well in dealing with workforce. Oops, I don't know why this is happening. Maybe we need to switch this off. Yeah. Okay. And you also are an executive member on the institute. Do you hear me without the mic?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did mean to go for a trim before. I'm sorry, I didn't have the time. So you're also a member of an executive member of the Association of Private Training Educational Institutions in Mauritius. So you have that umbrella vision around education in Mauritius. So you'd be wearing this hat while you're talking to us today. Thank you for everything, Marie. Please have a seat.
Thank you.
I think it's better. Yeah. Technology, they say it's good. Is it? Better?
Wow.
Okay, sorry about that. I'd like to call upon our other panelists now, in turn as I introduce them. If join me on stage or on, how do we call this, Maria? This is not really a
Floor.
the lounge, yes, the lounge, Espresso Coffee Lounge. Charles Crowell, founder, coach of ThriveX Coaching. Charles today he represents the younger forward generation, the troublemaker generation, if I can call it, the Generation Z, and the one just before it, it's millennials. He works a lot with them. Before coming to Mauritius, Charles was in the L'Oreal group. He worked in China, he was in supply chain, working across a very diverse workforce, and he's come today to share his experience, his international experience, but of course his experience working with and coaching leaders, business leaders, and people in employment. Please, Charles, have a seat. Thank you. Looking forward to it all with you. Next is, I don't think he needs any introduction. The last two don't need, as I think, we know them being in the HR profession. We hear them quite often, or we see them on LinkedIn. But I have a bit of an embarras de choix, but Manish, please join us on stage. In our coffee lounge, apologies. Manish Bandhan. Little confidence. Manish is somebody who I look up to in terms of his HR practices. And I've said this before to him. When I joined the profession, he was one of the people I thought one day I'd like to emulate in some way. I'm not there yet, but hopefully after today and sort of rubbing my back against his a little bit, that's going to happen. Manish is the Chief People Executive of the Rogers Group. He's also an author. He's written 2 books, The Disruptor and Shots of Insight, which have all been bestsellers on Amazon, and quite a forward thinker in his approach to managing the personnel of the Rogers Group. I think some of you are here and you will agree with me that you're lucky to have him coaching, guiding you, and somehow he must have got something right. So let's hear it from you today. Thank you so much, Manish, for being here. It's really special having you. Please, have a seat. And last but not least, Mr. Pradip Darsan. Please join me on stage, Chief Operating Officer from Business Mauritius, a very busy person who's just flown in from ILO, representing Mauritius in the world of labor and affairs, and he's come to really shake us up today. Do we need to introduce Mr. Darsan more? Or do we all know him from his, you've stopped them, haven't you? We haven't been to your HR sessions in a while. Yes, we have to. And or we can continue it here at HR Cafe, and we'll come and boggle your mind from time to time. But thank you, Mr. Darsan, for everything you do for the business community. We are very humbled to have you with us today, and I think without you, this panel wouldn't have been complete. Thank you. Bonjour. Please, have a seat. Okay, so I think we're done with the introductions. Just before we start, a little bit of house rules. For you, I know there's quite a number of you who are here from previous sessions as well, but for the newcomers, this is a conversation that we have. I think there's some echo. Does that bother you? Would you prefer the mic off? Yeah? Okay. Yes. Thank you. Yes, so a little bit of house rules. So we will have a bit of a conversation over the next hour or so. It is not a pre-formatted session. We speak naturally, free-flowing. I will be a timekeeper. I haven't been too good, I must admit it, but I'm going to correct this going forward, trust me. And at the end, there'll be a 45-minute interactive question and answer time, comment section. And I know some of you have a lot to ask, but time management is going to be key if you want to go back home and enjoy the weekend. Of course, I think Marie would be more than happy to have us forever here. But let's try to maintain timekeeping. My panel members, thank you once again. Housekeeping for you as well. You're not exempted, unfortunately. We will start off, and questions will be, there'll be a question to all of you, each one of you, and then afterwards, it's just probing questions going on as we evolve in the dialogue. If ever somebody wants to come in, just a little show of hands and I'll pass the mic to you at the soonest possible time. Please, while talking, bear in mind that in the audience here, when I looked at the confirmed registration list, we have people from a diverse sector. We talk about diversity and inclusion. So please think of manufacturing sector, services sector. Please think about those retail sectors that are quite in a dilemma at the moment due to workforce issues at the moment. Make sure to touch upon those as well when you talk, as well as, of course, the traditional corporate sector at the same time. Okay, ready to start? Right. So my first question, and that's a leading question maybe, and I'd like you to give your insight, Manish, first, is the theme for today is the workforce. It's around the workforce of today, 2023. What needs to change? Can I please have your reading about your description about this workforce of today, how you see it, and is there anything to change? Without telling us what needs to change, but do we need to change anything at all?
You want the long answer or the short answer?
Oh, I forgot to mention, we'll keep it brief, 3 minutes per person.
So the short answer, do we need to change? Yes. I rest my case. Actually, we are living in what I call disruptive times. If you look at it, the way the world is described today is described as VUCA. VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And there's also another term which has been described is RUPT, which is rapid, unprecedented change, paradoxical, and tangled. And why this is so is the fact that the world, the pace of change is changing, is increasing around us. If you look at it, there are two main things which are impacting the workforce of today. One is disruptive technology. How many of you, by the way, have, by show of hands, are using ChatGPT? So I rest my case.
Not guilty, are we?
And this has simplified your lives, isn't our lives? And so that's one, the impact of technology, how it's disrupting the workforce, workplace, and the nature of work, actually. So that's one. And secondly, something which is a bit even more challenging that we are still figuring it out. The metaphor I have for that is it's like you're trying to build a plane while flying it. And that area is the skills required for a low carbon economy. So a low carbon future. And this is something which is also driving change around the world with climate change, with global warming and so on and so forth, plus the need for having more sustainability in businesses. So it's impacting the nature of work as well. So in a sense, yes, we have to change because the world is changing. And to be able to stay relevant and dynamic, we cannot but change. Thus, as was mentioned, adapt or perish.
Thank you for this, Manish. Charles, you've been working with people all throughout your career. What's your reading of this workforce of today, and do we change?
Well, yes, of course we change. So I'll back that up, and we're in a constant state of evolution. So that is natural. And indeed, the need for change is really relevant right now. And I want to add one more word onto those that Manish has given us, and that's permacrisis, because that was the word of the year for last year. And that's what we lived through. Through all out COVID, everyone in the world was touched somehow by this crisis. And that upended everyone's existence, everyone's understanding of how the world works, how we interact as humans, and what's really important to us. And then you layer upon that permacrisis of COVID, you layer on top of that global warming, you layer on top of that conflicts that are happening everywhere in the world. And this has really created a real disruption for people's understanding of themselves and how they want to exist in the world today. And I think that this was something that was coming gradually, but the intensity of the last 3 years has really made it something that has to happen right now. And now we've seen that people have really, in a short space of time, really looked at what's important to them. And they've re-established and redefined what they're looking for in their day-to-day lives and what that means for their work. And there's 2 studies that I recommend everyone get their hands on. It's free, you can download it. One is the PwC Hopes and Fears survey, which captures the sentiment of the global workforce. Another one is the Accenture Future of Work. And I reference both of those documents a lot in preparing topics and understanding what's going on. And what they've really highlighted, and very consistent across both of those things, is that people nowadays are really seeking for purpose. They want a sense of meaning in the work that they do. And that all of a sudden has sort of shot up beyond benefits, beyond rewards. And so that sense of purpose, and how do we integrate that purpose into our work and into our life and make sure that, the values that we hold are being represented by the organizations that we work for. And that's, I think, one element. And then on the other side of that, to service that, they're looking for flexibility.
That's a lot going on in there, Charles, aren't there? I think you're convincing us about the different things going on, and we need to change. Thank you. Let's develop that as we progress. Thank you. Okay, so from leading on from this, I think in a very natural way, Marie, you're preparing the workforce, you and your counterparts in other universities and training institutions. Yet, let me be a little bit cheeky and maybe blunt here. I know Middlesex University, I know a number of institutions, we've got Amity here, we've got representatives from other institutions as well. You do a very good job, the universities do a very good job, but somehow when we face them, I know there's a few recruiters in the room here, during interview itself, we find that something has to change. So the same question to you about this workforce that's coming to the labour market. What's going on? Who are they really that you're sending off to us?
Thank you, Elena. And you know what, I'm building on what the previous 2 speakers said. I think there's 2 elements here, and I think it's all of our responsibility to understand it. The first one is identity, and the second one is legitimacy. So identity is who am I? And legitimacy is why do you expect me to do what you expect me to do? And when it comes to identity, I think we as an older generation has a very established identity. So from our perspective, right, when I was born as a white South African Christian. And with that came a lot of expectations and challenges. I was not allowed to question any of those labels. Those were the labels associated to me, and that's the labels I grew up with. But the youth of today want to discover, they want to decide who they want to be, and we need to convince them that there's a worthwhile reason for them to become that person, right? And I think that's the problem. I think as employers, you too have a responsibility. You can't shift that responsibility. We are talking about lifelong learning. I tell my staff, I learn every day. So why do you expect that if a 50-year-old woman with a PhD still needs to learn every day, that someone that has just graduated that will know everything. So I think that's the first question you need to ask yourself. What is your responsibility? And then how do we treat them? Because I will tell you this, youth of today don't want to be instructed. They want to discover. Right, so right next door, and I've been mentioning this, but I am so immensely proud of our students. They have arranged a hackathon. They managed to get more than 100 students here from across the island to participate. They even have a team from Vancouver, and they're telling me next year they will have some teams from India as well. It is self-organized. It is led by the students themselves. They have got sponsors for this entire event, and you should see how well they are organized. But it would have been quite a different situation if we told them, you organize a hackathon, and this is what you should be doing. We just say, no, we're not doing that. But if you say to them, find something that you're passionate about, do it, they will do it exceptionally well. So for me, it's about identity and legitimacy, and it's about understanding that it's not they that need to change, it's us. If we want to build a future together, it is not about graduates coming in knowing everything. You know, I'm sorry, you didn't know everything when you started. I still don't know everything. I still learn everything, so why do we expect that from graduates? So I think that's my 2 cents. And you thought you were going to be provocative.
That's more than 2 cents, and very, very sort of thought-provoking, not to be too cliche, but I think you make us reflect on our sort of values. And well, we'll come back to this and how we're going to adapt later on. But before that, I'm sure Mr. Derson has a lot to say in 3 minutes. Let's hear it from you.
Thank you, Chair. But I just need 15 seconds to acknowledge the presence of many colleagues, peers, friends from the fraternity. The collective wisdom that we have over here is much more than we possess over here. So I'm also going to build on what previous speakers have said. But I want to be provocative. Change, yes, we need to change. But why change? Is it something new? What is happening these days existed. It's just a recycle. We have witnessed the thing. Lessons have not been learned. Change, yes. Change by whom? Change by whom? For what we are witnessing these days, building on what has been said, so many things, but said very quickly and very lightly, which needs to be brought in. I think the session just can devote to what has been said over here. Now, there's change. If there is a change, there is a change for businesses. Fundamental. There are so many mega trends. People are just flagging so many issues. And we don't understand the merits of it, the impact of it. The change, if there is a big change, is autonomy. What has happened is workers. This, from what we have gathered from our studies, be it in law, in industrial relations, in HR, this power imbalance has changed. It's no more the employer who has control over everything. And the big change is working time. Workers, workforce, they want to appropriate how they're going to work, with whom they're going to work, where they're going to work, what would be the remuneration at different economic parts of their career they want to get, and with whom they're going to work. This question, whether I'm working with an organization which is contributing to the wider benefit of the community, or I'm just working for any other organization obsessed by profits. Climate change, sustainable development. If I can't relate myself with what my organization, why should I spend my time? The 2 big triggers before I hand over to you has been COVID. In COVID, people have realized one thing. My life, the life of my near and dear ones can end overnight. So what I have gained from work. So that's why the redefinition, this is the first mega trend, COVID, making sense of our economic activity. Binu. She could have been, Binu, please raise your hand. She could have been a PS, permanent secretary. Her peer today is the chief SC, chief
executive.
senior chief executive. Peer of Binu. Binu could have been batchmate. Binu is working on her own. Very successful entrepreneur. Like Binu. Rima.
Rima, raise your hand.
Juste pour vous démontrer, just to show to you that here. Now, the caring role, many people are leaving the labor market because they have, besides the professional role, certain caring and private parental roles. So, these things we have to factor in the discussion. The change is not only the change for many other things. Yes, disruptive technologies, climate change, but also going back to the basics. What people, the workforce actually, what people really want.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Darson, for this. I think what really strikes in everything that you said, yes, of course there's a need for change, but the need for change, correct me if I'm wrong, comes from a changing set of values in the workforce, and a changing set of values most probably linked to the new generations that are emerging. But coupled with that, I also hear a lot about technology that's come in, the crisis post-COVID, if we can call it post-COVID, I'm not too sure. So how do, and then there's one of you have said that the onus is on the employers to change. I mean, I feel for the employers. I cannot but help feeling for the employers, being one of them myself. Where do we start? What do we do to bring about the change? Because here we're talking about a shift in the organizational culture. We all know it takes time. So maybe if you were to give an advice on how to start, I don't know if that's a question to ask, but where do we start? Who would like to take?
So for me, the first thing that I think is important is to have time to listen. So we often think that it's our responsibility to coach and mentor staff. Have you ever thought about getting a mentor from a graduate level position, or from one of the people on your factory floor? And just take some time to listen. I think that's one of the things that we can find so much insight from. We look up for help, right? We look at studies, we look at consultants, we look at our peers. But have you ever just took some time to schedule a small time slot in your diary to listen to someone every week? That is at the entry level of your organization. I think you will find that there's immense insights there that can help you structure the way which you are doing things.
Yes, Charles.
I really echo that, because the essence of what you're trying to do is to engage and retain those people. So you have to understand what is their mindset, what is their perspective, and what it is that they value. And as we mentioned, there are so many trends, there are so many things that your organization could be doing to make impact on the wider world, but your company can't do all of that, and you don't need everyone to work at your organization. So I think you also need to listen to what it is that your target audience, which is your employees and the people that you hope to have working for you, what it is that they want and what do they need. Because for that group of people, flexibility might look different. For them, purpose might look different. In terms of career path, it might look different. And in terms of the impact that you can drive on the world, it might be different. Because naturally, your organization is going to be able to drive impact in different ways. Because if you're working in, say, a manufacturing sector, you've got an opportunity to reduce waste and to reduce transport costs, so you've got a direct impact to the environment. But if you're developing innovative tech, you've got an opportunity to be driving innovation and making sure that underprivileged people have access to your technology. So you don't have to be an environmentalist, you don't have to be a tech savant, you don't have to tackle everything, but you need to work out what it is that your organization can bring value in, and understand who you want to have working with you, and marry those two things together.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Charles. Anyone wants to add to this?
Yeah.
you were mentioning about culture, right? So I think what's important and is to be able to define what culture is, and essentially the way I would simplify it is culture is leadership. It's how the leaders that you have, how they embody it. In a sense, the culture that is needs to evolve and to attract people to work with you comes straight from the leaders, how they embody the values, how they live it, instead of telling people what to do, which starts with, as Marie was saying, start by listening. Listening, have empathy, be able to connect with people, so that's one. Also, being clear of what kind of organization you want to be. So, are you an organization which is here just to make profits, or are you an organization that wants to make positive, meaningful change around you, for people, for the planet, and for your customers, and so on? It's really shifting that focus on how you make things easier for this. That's what
so it's like
that's the
finding
starting
that
point.
value proposition that we bring to our people.
Which comes back to a sense of purpose.
Yes.
Is how am I making things easier for people around me?
Thank you. Yes.
What I just want to maybe add on at this level, I think there is a sort of proposition for the HR fraternity. This is an opportunity. I'm just not passing a judgment on what has been achieved so far. The socio-economic development of Mauritius has been done through HR also. The profession has contributed in getting the workforce and everything. But I think over here, HR needs to find a sort of new opportunity. The narrative of HR should change. And in many organizations, because here I can see...
change from where to where? From what to what?
Okay. Change from, if it is in the accountancy profession, it would have been changed from bookkeepers to accountants. But if it is from HR, change from administrators, personnel officers to human resources, strategic human resource officers, managers, who are specialists. Why? I can see an employer. The gentleman has been fighting many cases with us together at level of institutions. He's well versed, but his forte, his core is not people management. On many issues, we have disagreements because the way he's looking at, he has an HR manager. Likewise, I can see consultants advising employers, but I can see also seasoned HR managers. Look at your space. Look at what you are doing. Whether the stuff you are doing 15, 5, 10 years, or when you join work and what you are doing, when we are talking that there are mega trends, changes in the workforce. We just earlier said that the needs of workers or the new workforce is a bit different. But the services or l'accompagnement that we are giving, are we talking? Do we have time? Do we spend time? Or we are still bogged down with traditional routine things? This is where there is a renewed opportunity. Change your narrative. Make things happen. And very bluntly, all apologies, walk your talk. We value people, we put people first. Adduce evidence. Change the mindset, the culture that he is very fortunate. He can open, in a way, he can open the door. Open door policy means that he can go and talk to Philip. But many HR people still need to book a slot to talk to the accountant. Because the accountant is saying, well, I don't have time for this. Your PPE, your this, your... Exactly.
Accountants and HR people don't get along.
No, exactly.
That's how I contested.
So there is an opportunity. One takeaway is, okay, let us relook at our job. Let us bring a value proposition, how we can contribute to the overall enhancement of well-being.
I hear you all, my panelists for today. I cannot but ask you, therefore, again, forgive me about this, wearing my employer hat, but I'm sure a few of you will like this question here. as heads of organizations where we have to report on the bottom line figures, on the profits, because we are private sector enterprises, we don't have the luxury of being in a parastatal body or government-funded body. I didn't mean it for you. I'm sorry. No. In terms of, I didn't mean it for you. I really thought you were here. Forgive me. But what I'm trying to say is, how do we balance this act? Because on the one side, in my case, I have a husband who is very tech savvy and who keeps pushing me as the HR professional who I am, very traditional. Some of us are very traditional as HR professionals, the late adapters of technology, not looking at you here, Manish. But we are the late adapters. We've been known to be that for a while. And he keeps on telling me, my husband keeps on telling me, you know what? Get it automated. It's all about processes. It's not about people. It's all about processes. And you are coming to tell us that we need to put people first. Rightly so, we do. But how do we balance this act? Who would like to take this? How do we balance this act between running the business, reporting the figures, the targets appropriately, and having time, spending time with people, listening to them, valuing them?
Right, balancing act, just like marriage, right? So, I think the higher you go in organization, the less it's about process in your time, the more it's about people. The more you have to manage people, because I'm going to share it in French. You're moving from savoir-faire to savoir-faire. D'accord? So it's really, how do you influence people? If you look at it, the agenda of GMs, managing directors, CEOs, 70% of your time is what? People matters? Yes? Handling interactions with your employees, your talent, also your customers. And the rest then is, it's being able to add value. So I suppose if you look at it, when someone says, I'll be a bit provocative here, when you ask a CEO saying, well, my focus is on customer service, and you ask him, so when was the last time you met a customer or you served a customer? Very few, right? Very, very few. It's the people who are serving the customer that you need to focus on. You need to be able to create the environment, what I call an enabling environment, for them to be able to excel and to thrive. Be it with flexibility, with autonomy, with support, with mentoring. And that's the role of leaders today. That's where you'll be able to make a difference. You're not going to drive the bottom line directly. In fact, I'll end my 3 minutes here on, we don't build businesses. We build the people who build the business.
And do you still feel that with AI, and all the automation that's coming, technology and everything else, do we still need to nurture that building of people in the same way? How do we do that? Yes, Charles. Marie, did you want to say something?
At the end of the day, technology and technological advancements have been happening for millennia. So we're scared right now because this is new technology to us, but that has happened to every generation that has ever existed in the history of time. And at the end of the day, technology is always to assist humans and not the other way around. We are still very, very far away from the machines taking over. So we need to understand first, right, what it is that
we're... Are we really far away from the machines taking over? Sorry to interrupt.
Yes. Well, I think we are.
Okay.
And I think we have to trust, right, in that, what is coming forward to us is to ultimately assist us. So we need to decide how we want to go forward and what we're looking to achieve, leveraging that new technology and embracing that new technology to make our lives easier, more efficient, and with that additional manpower that or people power, as we should say, is freed up. We leverage that and we purpose that in different directions. There is no endless amount of work on this planet for us to do and to drive value. So if we can get out from behind the Excel spreadsheet and get out and do other work, let's go and do it.
Yes.
So again, I think actually, if you look from a learning perspective, technology is an enabler. It's an enabler, right? But to use technology and to use AI, for example, you need to know how to ask the right questions. Now, from a learning perspective, asking the right questions is much harder than repeating the right answers. I just want to let that sink in. If I ask you what is the 8 benefits of HR management, you can give it to me. But if I ask you a question that requires you to think about it, it's harder than just repeating what you know. And I think actually this is the amazing thing of the human brain. It is that technology will enable us to function much better. But in order for us to use the technology as an enabler, we need to know our subject field much better as well.
I can come in. Many centuries ago, when steam engine was invented, I think they had this sort of similar discussion. Yes. What would be the difficulty? And similarly, when the Egyptians were trying to start doing a bit of agriculture, there were the threats on climate change even then. So all these things keep on repeating. What technology and people work in tandem. The moment we realize this makes the difference. One is not at the expense of the other one. One is not here to replace the other one. What I can detail from what has just been said is that, okay, we are in a temple of learning, and businesses need to relate more with universities, with training institutions. Businesses so far have been on a receiving end, as if in my business model, the way I'm going to operate, I need to get people trained. And people trained the very first day, they are here, they are functional, and they're bringing me value, I get the profits. My business model is based like this. So this discourse, this narrative needs to change. These alliances, the skills that we need, and even we don't know what skills we need. Even our processes are changing because of technology. So it's better on NAMO. We start also, okay, we will be benefiting from the output of our educational system. To be politically correct, we all know what we are getting from our educational system these days. Rabaissement the grades and all these things. So, and we are witnessing this. I'm not passing a judgment. We know the workforce we are dealing with, the emails, the letters, the orders, the files they're working. And because they have not been prepared for the world of work, where this preparation from the world of work? Is it at the level of the family? Is it at the level of the university? Is it at the level of the enterprise? No. This preparation is not there. So I think our takeaway would be, okay, we need skilled people, we need talented people, we need people who will work, and then there is this correlation with profits, value, or whatever it is. So we need also to invest the way institutions, be it public and private. And we can see value in private investment of skills. And this is where my request to many employers, please devote a bit of your investment working with institutions of learning and training, so that in the supply chain, they already are in a process of attending to your needs. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Derson. I think from what you say, let's talk about the situation that we face on the ground in the Mauritian context. You've mentioned the mismatch in skills between studies and the world of work. Middlesex University, en passant, let me just blow your trumpet a little bit. I know you do a lot in employability skills. I've been here, I think Manish has been here as well, doing some training, entrepreneurship training and skills for employability training with the staff. Kudos to Dalila, I don't know where she is, Dalila Kala. Oh, you're in front, yes, head of employability at Middlesex. So we have a skills mismatch. That's where I'm coming to. In spite of you're doing fabulous work, but overall, if we look at the workforce in general, there's a skills mismatch. Is it, I mean, I'd like to ask you, I don't think it's a fair question, but I'll ask it to you anyway. Where does the skills mismatch come from? I know we've spoken about employers needing to change culture, etc. But on the ground, like you say, I take a new hire, high expectations. They do choose their salary, rightly so, and lay the expectations in the social contract between the employer and the employee, saying this is what I want when I'm coming to work for you. And but very often it's a letdown from the employer, and us being HR or being the ones managing people, we take the flak. So what's that about the skills mismatch? Yes, I know there's a tie here, but Manish.
Faut te finir, c'est Manish.
I would share two perspectives here, which is different. You see, by the time the student reaches university, tertiary education, or even the employer, it's too late. For me, the skills mismatch starts at home and at school. At home, in the sense that there's very often peer pressure or pressure from the family to go towards a certain career choice.
Anish, my daughter's sitting in the room somewhere.
This is for you. Don't listen to them. It's what I mean to say is the whole approach starts at grassroots level when your kids are growing up, is being able to find the talent that they have, discover their strengths, and help them focus on that. You see, having been in HR for more than 20, 25 years, what I've seen is people reach a certain point in their career when they realize, well, you know, it's not meaningful what I'm doing, it's not connected to my dream, it's not connected to my passion. And they end up making a career change, 180 degrees, to be able to go and do that. How many of you have experienced that or know people like that? You see, so it starts with being clear, developing clarity on your strengths, on your passion, on your purpose, as well as what is something that you always dreamt of doing, where you believe you would be playing to your strengths. That's what we call the labor of love. So that's one. Second then comes at the school level to the ability to have proper career guidance. Because very often when you have to choose your field of studies, you're still very young, you're an adolescent, your brain is still forming actually, isn't it? So it's only for men, I know it's around 27 that we become mature. Yes. By the time then you get ready to get married. But imagine you have to choose a choice of subject after what, 15 years, what you're going to do. And
13 now.
13 now, so that's even it's very difficult. And without proper career guidance, and career guidance starts by not trying to standardize everything, but being able to focus on the person, the individual, understanding their gifts, the child's gifts, and then nudging them, finding a support for them towards that, and finding mentors for them.
Yeah, you remind me of this time when everyone needed to either be a lawyer, a doctor, a manager, those boxes that we put in.
And you know, there's a saying for that, especially I come from an Indian family, my mother is Indian, so good thing she's not hearing me here, hope it's not. It's in traditional families, you become either a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer, or a family disappointment.
No, I love all those sharings and I resonated with a lot of that. I think from my perspective, I'm going to give a bit more practical advice. Because ultimately what I spend a lot of my time doing in my work is working with high potential people and helping them build the career that they want inside these organizations. So once they've already had all of those formative experiences, and now they're trying to make it work. And the biggest thing that I see coming through is that coming through university and schooling, it's a meritocracy. You do the work, you get the grades, you get the reward. It's a scholarship, it's top of the class, the honor society, you get access to the internship, you get the role. So it's really, work hard, you get rewarded. But once you get into the workforce, it's not that. It's about how your performance is perceived by others that is ultimately going to determine what position you're going to get next. And so I see a lot of young people coming into the workforce, working so hard, trying to make it happen, trying to do all the work, and then getting upset that they're not getting recognized, getting frustrated that they're not getting the opportunity, that the person next to them who's got the gift of the gab is getting the promotion ahead of them. So I think there's a lot of work to be done educating these cohorts when they're coming into the workforce to say, hey, you have to be managing your personal brand. You need to be making sure that you're visible when you're making choices about yourself. And to make what you're doing at those early stages, get involved in the social stuff, make sure that your boss can see the work that you're doing, find opportunities to promote yourself. And I think also as managers, we have a responsibility to foster that education and make sure that they're feeling empowered to take control of their career and not sort of do all the work and then get frustrated when they're not getting promoted. So I think that's a really practical element that we can take action on right now.
Thank you, Charles. I'll just pass the mic to Pradeep and then to Marie, and then we'll have one last question before opening the floor.
Sure. So I think it's the appropriate time also to start talking the not so nice things also. So that part of the conversation whereby. So my first point would be there are currently, according to official stats, 8,000 women who are of working age without any formal education, without numeracy, literacy skills, nothing. Who is the volunteer over here to recruit that workforce? Okay, sir. Bravo. We have currently, with whatever has happened in our educational system, students already having attained 18 years, still in extended program. And most probably, malgré with all their good efforts, maybe they won't be successful. So there will be dropouts. Over the past years, we have this thing. So when these dropouts, these people enter the labor market, and we have vulnerable and segmented groups whereby dissipated, we don't know. So this is also a challenge to what we're talking about, the workforce. We're talking about the nice things, yes, getting people university training and all these things, but Mauritian businesses, you have this workforce, and the more we alienate these people, the more the difficulty will be. I'll just share with you on 2 days ago, in an official meeting, not to be quoted outside over here because I was privy to that. A minister showed me a payslip of somebody working 33 years, drawing 13,500 in a hotel. And he's telling me, I'm going to send this sector for NRB to review wages, terms and conditions. So there are certain practices also that we need. We're talking about that segment. Workforce is workforce. The more we alienate people who don't possess skills, we will be on a verge of, I'm not here to prophesy that we are going to have this or that, this doomsday theory, but we have to live with these challenges, and this puts pressure on us. And this now boils down to policymakers not giving us businesses an enabling business environment. Why human resource practices or labor administration or whatever policies, you'll find a disconnect between educational policies and employment policies. It's because they're working in silos. And for me, if I'm talking to this fraternity, is we as businesses, we as end users, because we are the ones who provide jobs. Forget Nabila getting a job parastatal or government. This is a minority. The dream job of any Mauritian, c'est quoi? Get a job in government. Even if they're working in private sector, they will ditch the job if tomorrow they get a job in government. Because of pensions, because of PRB, because of don't account it. So there is the necessity for businesses to appropriate the space in skills development, in education, in other wider policies. You do it either through your association, through Business Mauritius. Oh, there are so many avenues, but you can't be a passive receiver. This is yes.
Thank you, Pradeep. You're good? Okay. So, can we count on Business Mauritius to support us? Because no, I mean, I'm serious. Because this dialogue that you mentioned, academia, employment, policymakers, somehow I view you, maybe wrongly so, but as part of the policy making, because you have a voice, you represent our voice. So that dialogue needs to be strengthened. And on behalf of our HR Cafe followers here, I'd like to appeal to you to please strengthen this dialogue, because yes, that's where the meaningful change lies, I believe. Yeah, you touched upon people working in certain industries, salaries not evolving, and that was something I really wanted to talk about today as well, knowing it's an issue. We spoke about this once, Manish, the brain drain, where we are facing a lot of trouble in hanging on to our people because the pasture is greener elsewhere, and the paradox is we're having to bring in people to fill in these gaps. Is this trend going to accentuate over time, or do you feel that there are ways to go around it?
No, I can.
Je dis jamais non, hein, for their things. I think on this issue, let us be very pragmatic. This question, the peopling of Mauritius itself has been through, we don't, for example, il n'y avait pas des autochtones, indigenous people over here, people from everywhere abroad over here. So people moving in and out is in our DNA. It's nothing new. What the difficulty we are having these days is, for example, if the pastures are greener elsewhere, there is no harm in people moving around. But in fact, there are many reasons why people leave. There are enterprise level reasons and there are other reasons. We put it under the umbrella of other reasons. And we all know that other reasons have to do with societal issues in Mauritius. It's not the place that we're going to vouch all these things. But at the enterprise level, issues like, for example, equity and fairness in salaries, career progression, flexibility, and all these, what we talk about, caring, nursing roles, flexibilities. These days we are having top-notch women professionals because they have other obligations, and if they're not getting the flexibility, they prefer to leave. The activity rate of women is already low compared to our peer countries, and even now the professionals, some of them leave. So it's been dropping down. So what for example, needs to be done effectively? We need to admit that the flow of people in and out the country, in and out organizations is going. And we need to prepare ourselves that, okay, we need to have the right policies also to attract people. Opening of the economy. Now, previous years there has been a sort of disconnect between tax policies and other policies whereby Mauritius was not a place for professionals to come. Now, also, you have this restriction on spouse working and this and that. All these things have been addressed. You find we move from one extreme to other extreme now. In the finance bill, vous allez voir now opening work permits, OP, silent agreement. See, because it is critical. We may have a term used by Americans, we may have a shutdown. Si on ne fait pas attention. That's why. So, pastures being greener, no, the pasture where you water
it becomes greener.
Becomes
I think that's a beautiful way
so,
to
but
see
we
it.
need to accept that people will move
Yeah.
for opportunities, for international exposure, and we need to have a sort of open migration policy.
I think I'll just add to that. I think the world is becoming global, right? We've seen it. We've seen I'm looking at the young people next door again. A lot of our students in IT, for example, from the very first year, they pitch for projects online, and they're in Mauritius doing it, and they earn good money doing that. I think the issue is, and I've listened on Sky News today about young doctors in the UK having greener pastures in Australia. You know, sometimes it is greener pastures because there's water or because there's more manure. To use the right word. I do see, however, that a lot of people are coming back to Mauritius as well. And when I speak to my UK colleague, and I must just say that Mauritius is the dream. So I wonder sometimes whether, and it's exactly what you said, how do we get the right people in, and how do we get people to come back in as well? Because you know what, I think that's the very foundation of growth, is to allow people to move and learn elsewhere and bring back that learning to our country. Why do we resist that? I think it's good for people to grow. I think, in fact, that is one of the things that I see in Mauritius. People still stay with the same organization year on, year out. In the rest of the world, we have exit strategies. We know that it's not lifelong employment because new blood brings new ideas. So maybe, you know, going global is not a bad thing, as long as people are welcome to come back.
One last item I would share. I'm not going to add to what they're saying. It's already very pertinent. I think what needs to happen is in Mauritius, because of the brain drain and the fact that our population is shrinking, we need to make more babies. So what I mean to say here is that, you know, our replacement ratio for Mauritius is 2.1 kids per family. Well, that's the ratio, right? You can't make 2.1, you can make 2 or 3. So, but our current replacement ratio is 1.4. So we are well below the capacity to be able to sustain our population, yet even grow it. So that's one first thing that we need to look at is what are the policies, what are the elements in play that we have to put in place to encourage population growth in the country, as well as have a more open policy to be able to have a migration policy towards to be more able to welcome people in Mauritius.
Thank you. Charles, anything to add?
Well, I've got the chance, right? I think that Mauritius has done a lot of great things to open up the opportunity for immigration and creating opportunities for people to come. But I think there is still work to be done in terms of diversity and inclusion, because same-sex marriage is still not recognised here. That is a blocking point for a lot of foreign people wanting to come and work here. So there are still levels, and even though we've gone from one extreme to another, there's still another jump that needs to be made to make sure that we're really capturing the full gamut of who can potentially bring value to us. And that's 15% of the global population.
So again, that's culture mindset change we're talking about here, and this needs to start somewhere, even if it takes time. Yeah. Okay, so I'm tempted to say let's open the floor to questions and comments, and then maybe towards the end you can have key takeaways that you'd like to share with the audience, if you're okay with this. I know we haven't, there's so much more to talk about, but I know that some of you might be restless to put in a word.
Can I start here?
Yes, of course. Yes,
because I think we start here and then we go round. And
I don't think you need a microphone, do you? You don't need the microphone.
I don't need, you can hear me, huh?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
My name is Bernard, and I came back to Mauritius in 1980, right? And then I started my my company here. At the time it was called Active Alarm System. I'm in security, yeah? And when we go back to the title, it is the workforce of today and changes that has to be made, no? something
what
like
needs
this.
to change, yes.
So maybe I say a few words about the workforce of yesterday, right? What it was like before and how it has changed, right? And how I've had to change.
Then just
Right.
remember you've got 3 minutes.
I know. I've got 3 minutes.
Yes.
But I don't know whether a lot of young people here, the workforce of yesterday was like been mentioned, once you go in, you stay with that company for a long time. You think about your retirement. And this is how the way we worked as well, as employer. But this has changed. Because now people work for you, they use your company as a stepping stone. So what needs to be changed so that this this carries on. And as you've mentioned, many people go away now because the grass is greener, so many advertising and so on. So we need to have people coming in, and government needs to make it easier. I know a lot of things have been said in the budget now, but will it actually apply? This is the problem.
Thank you.
This is the problem.
It just made me realize we've got somebody in immigration business.
Yes.
Who's responsible somehow for the brain drain. I don't know where he's sitting. I know
He's not
arrivals and
responsible.
others. Yes, yes. But your question, therefore, just to summarize, is
No,
how
what
to...
needs to be changed? Right, I have some answers, but not all. One is the mentality of people not going into academia. This has to be changed so that we give value to people who, as a plumber, electrician, and so on, and by the parents also, pushing that and understanding that, right?
Yes.
We can't do anything about people working in government. We carry on training all the time. People leave. As police take on people, we have so many, 10, 20 people go. Because they want to work in the public sector. With this, I don't know how you cope with that. But this is what we find. A lot of people leaving, even they get less money, they want to go into the public sector.
So
maybe some answers,
syndrome.
what can be done? What can be done?
I mean, one of the first things you can do is stop referring to your organization as a family. Because the first thing you do when you enter a company is sign a contract. Your relationship is contractual. It's an exchange of goods and services between two individuals, essentially an entity and you. So you need to be clear from the outset that that's what the relationship is. And then once you've got a clear transparency about that, you can have a very open conversation. What do you need in order to do what you want to do? And this is what I need from you. This is the agreement we're going to be making. This is what it's going to look like. It can be clear. And then that way it's going to save you a lot of time and effort and struggle trying to manage the emotions and the drama that surrounds that. And just be upfront and transparent about, what it needs and what it means to work in that company and how you can make those win-wins happen.
Allow me to comment, isn't this paradoxal? Because on one side we say we need to give more TLC, tender love and care to our employees, but on the other side you're telling us to break that family perspective on the organization.
What I say is, though, it's about not an organization being a family, it's an organization being a community.
Right.
And it's about having individuals that are coming together to walk towards a common goal. And to do that, you have to prescribe by this set of rules and this is what's expected. And if that doesn't meet your expectations, you're more than welcome to leave. Or if you break the rules, it's time to go. And that way it becomes more about a collective will of people working towards a common goal, and there aren't all the associations of what it means to be a family, because there's lots of wonderful things about family, but there's lots of negative things that can happen in that context, because at the end of the day, your colleagues in that sense, you can say things to family that you can't say to your colleagues, right? And it's important to have that distinction.
I think Manish wanted to say something, and then Marie, over to you.
Yes, two things. One is I totally relate to what Charles is saying. Is I fully agree that your company is not a family. It's a community that you choose to work with, because you don't hire or fire your family members. So and you don't do performance reviews, give them bonuses, and so on. So that's one. The second thing, what needs to change is, I think the first step is to change your mindset by changing your expectations. What I mean to say here is changing your expectation that the change is going to increase with newer generations coming in, and the span of time they're going to stay with you is going to decrease. We've seen it from generation to generation, the span of time has decreased, which means the expectation you need to have now is you need to be constantly building a pipeline. That is a continuous learning and continuous growing of people, a pipeline, so that when someone leaves, you have someone who can step up from that. So that's a shift in mindset in a way. The best example for that you can look at is football teams. I happen to follow one of the greatest teams in the world, Manchester United. The example is a team like Manchester United, even if you have a leadership crisis at the moment with the shareholders and so on, what has happened is, what have been successful is, for I don't know how many years they've had academy players playing in the first team. They've been able to grow the pipeline. So, and this is which has all been able to sustain their as a business model. They have been able to grow people.
I just want to say from a very practical level, inclusivity and diversity means that we appreciate that everyone has their own value system and that we don't question it. So at Middlesex, for example, we have removed the term to values and we've created community principles. And those principles guide what we do. And within those principles, we operate as a community. So we know what is right and what is wrong, what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And then it's no longer personal. It is about, you have your own values, we appreciate that. But when you come to our community, when you are part of our community, these are our expectations. Either you accept and embrace these principles, or you find an alternative venue. And I think that's where we need to move. It is not a family, it is a community. So let's create a community. And a community has roots. And I think that's an important part.
Yeah, please. A very simple answer is, this is a cry for help. Maybe we don't realize it. What Ben is trying just to tell us is he should not be aggressed by others. These answers, I can only agree with you. It's for a typical type of workforce in typical industries. He's working with security guards, with people who don't have any other avenues of employment. These people join his, and tomorrow there is a poaching because government is recruiting scavengers, is recruiting whatever grades, and these people will just leave. He has to run businesses, he has signed contracts, and he's being aggressed by whom? By the state, because the state now is acting as an employer. So when we have loose and double standards, when the state is not respecting notice, when the state is just issuing a letter on a Friday and telling the person, if you don't join on Monday, your offer goes. So he is operating in that business. And his takeaway from the HR cafe would be, the great ideas. So the message is also, we need also to be sending that we need coherent policies. On the one hand, we are talking about the things, but on the other hand, the daily bread and morning prayer. I was saying bread and butter prayer, no, but the morning prayer would be, please, survival, let me manage, let me run my business.
True. Thank you for this, Pradeep. Just to say, while you're saying it's the policy makers without going into politics or everything, but we did invite the Ministry of Labour to the panel, and I think it would have been interesting to have policy makers amongst us. And I do hope one day, Jean-Claude, you're filming, I do hope that one day we do have policymakers attending HR Cafe so that we can take things forward meaningfully. It's not just about talking, it's not just about, beautiful things, as you say, but let's hope. Yes, another front bencher. I think we've skipped the three ladies, maybe later on. Do you need a microphone? You're good?
Yeah, I think so.
Yep.
Unless you should come before.
No, that's right.
Thank you. Is it working? Thanks. I really wanted to follow on the footsteps of Bernard, right? Because
I have been called worse. Huh?
You are going to be called worse.
Yeah.
I also like you. My name is Juan, and I just came back to Mauritius last year. It's what you said a bit. It sounds a bit like Alcoholic Anonymous. No, I mean the title. I'm intervening, by the way, as a non-HR professional, which I think will give you a user perspective, a more innocent, maybe naive, more practical, maybe. So your title was workforce. The keywords were workforce today change. A great guy, John Katzenbach from McKinsey. I hate McKinsey, by the way, but the guy was really great. He talked a lot on change management, and he said managers of today are really change managers. It's not, and I think to me that's my simplistic answer to the challenge of AI. Because if you are just a routine manager, you will be made redundant in the coming weeks, as opposed to a people change manager. If you are not made redundant, you are in the wrong organization. If you are just doing routine things, that's one thing. So I have worked in many bad companies in the past, but I was very lucky to work for a low-cost airline in the UK, EasyJet, which was a very nice culture, and we were doing I was in charge of projects, on strategic projects, and we had to do change management, even though we were a very young company, which is a good thing. And it was done, it was driven by, well, I was always passionate about change, and I was volunteered to drive change management with the director of marketing. So we were helped by HR, of course, because we are not people's professional, but it was done bottom up, laterally, across the organization, which I think was very, very good.
Just to remind you, 3 minutes per person, please, because we
I'll
need
just
to.
take another 1
Yes,
minute.
thank you.
So I would say, and sorry to challenge you, I think people is too important to be left to HR. It should be done by everybody, just like General de Gaulle, who said the war is too important to be left to the military. So I will end on an anecdote, which is a question to you, and I'm going to spoil the party for you. Again, I'm not boasting. I mean, I was lucky to be at EasyJet, and I have worked in bad companies also. But just an anecdote, I was the young guy from Mauritius. I was a long time ago in my early 30s, and it was my first week. I had to discuss my contract with a young girl from HR. And, you know, in those days, or even now, you book a room, right? The culture we had at EasyJet is that I booked a room to discuss my contract, and when I went to the room in the corridor, I went there before the girl from HR came, the CEO and the director of strategy were discussing probably something very important, not my contract. But I booked the room, and that was the rule. And the girl came and kicked them out of the room. And she said, guys, off you go, sort of, this is our room, that's not your room. So this anecdote, it's a question to you. How many of you can do this in your organization today? Now, forget about Mauritius, forget about Asia, Africa. I was intervening, I was a visiting lecturer in some MBAs in France, and people said, you cannot do that in France. So that's an anecdote. So it's a very practical, very micro thing I'm saying, but I think it's very important.
Yeah, it speaks of the value proposition and the culture.
Very, very practical things to do in your organization, I think.
Yeah. So who's being kicked out of the room?
I've been part of an organization that's instilled that culture. So I worked 13 years for the L'Oreal Group, which has a very established culture, a very old company that's existed for a long time with a very traditional French mindset of aggression, of conflict, of that's not good enough, try harder. And ultimately the culture was destroying the company. They were struggling with retention, struggling with people, and they had to, unlike EasyJet, which emerged and defined their culture from the beginning, they've had to then shift that culture. And I was part of that change, and it took 10 years. Originally, it came from a strategy that came from the CEO, that comes from then downplayed into the HR teams to then roll out to a global audience. And then we in each of the affiliates had to then take that on. And as a business leader, I was head of supply chain at that time. We had to interpret those values and then drive the change within our team. So you're absolutely right. HR isn't the one that has to drive the change. People working in the business have to take leadership and ownership of that. And so I think HR role is there to create the structure and the vision and the enablement, but ultimately you have to find those key people in your organizations, the ones that are setting the tone, that are driving people, that are setting the mood, and make sure that those are the ones that are carrying the values that you're trying to instill and demonstrate that leadership. So I think there's a partnership approach, not, oh, this is HR's job and that's my job. It's about making sure that you're each playing your role and driving that forward.
Thank you, Charles. Yep. Question from Mr. Dion. Do you need a microphone or?
I don't think so.
Acoustics are pretty good.
Yeah.
Yes, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Dion Mann. I'm new to the island, as in 2 years now. Loving it. It's now my new home. I don't really have a question. I just more said. I just want to carry on for what the gentleman said there. Now, first off, to the panel, thank you for your input, and I firmly believe that what you're saying really touches and is real and things we experience. I would hate to be an HR person. I mean, it's the worst job on this.
Thank you.
You've got a company on the one side and then you've got behavior on the other side, and to make your way between that is difficult, especially if you don't have a CEO that supports you through the process. Before I go into my statement, I just make a point on the workforce. I'm a firm believer in statistics, and I do a lot of research for statistics. Now, just give you an idea on HR and the workforce. if you look at the three biggest trends in the world at the moment, one is directly related to what you're talking about, and it's deemed as knowledge sourcing. So what's happening is that people are now being brought on board for their time. Currently, it's about a $15 billion a year business. By the year 2025, 2 years from now, it's going to be a $125 billion business. And by the year 2030, it's going to be a $2 trillion business. And fundamentally what it says is companies are no longer employing people. They're employing contractors for when they need it, where they need it. And from a workforce point of view, that's what they also want. So it's sort of a common thing come together. So what must change? We must realize that this is changing, and we're going to have to change with that as well. But I want to go to the point I want to raise, and carry on with what the gentleman said over there. Just some background about me. I sit on 6 company boards. I'm the CEO, group CEO of a company in South Africa. We operate in the 200 biggest companies in South Africa, where I sit at board levels and have discussions at board levels. Our HR turnover is less than 3%, and the majority of our staff over the last 21 years have been with us for over 15 years. So we must be doing something right. And to me, it comes down to one fundamental thing. We spoke about culture, we spoke about principles, values. And I don't believe that people have changed over time. Because if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, nothing has changed. To me, what has changed is the loss of leadership in the world and the loss of leadership in companies. And I think fundamentally, if we start looking at the leaders and making sure the leaders know what they're doing, it will have an impact on that. And it started with the CEO. To me, the most important person in the company is the CEO, and he's got only 2 jobs. 1, set strategy. 2, culture. And as long as the CEO is working on the culture for a company, as far as I'm concerned, it has to work down to the lower levels and create an environment where people want to work with you and for you. We can talk about things like global warming. I mean, that's part of your culture, of who you are. And if people buy into that, they stay with you. And that's my view.
Thank you so much, Dion. That's very insightful. Just before I'll take more questions or comments. Anyone wants to bounce back on anything? You good? Yep. Thank you. Okay. So now there's a tie. I don't have my VR installed yet, but in view of diversity, maybe we've had a question there. Let's take Mr. Ramsahai's question. For information, those who do not know him, Mr. Ramsahai is one of our most loyal HR Cafe followers, a bit of a troublemaker. Let's see what happens. Yes, please.
I don't really have a question, except that to say that I have no business with HR, though I'm a very keen observer of what's happening in the sector. I'm optimistic by nature, but I'm struggling with myself to take a dystopian view of the whole situation this moment. I think we have been, my own take is that we have been addressing the nuts and bolts of the sector. But if we're addressing nuts and bolts of a machine that may soon become obsolete, what do we do? I think the steam engine, yes, was a revolution. But what's happening in terms of technological development is disruptive, yes. In fact, it's so disruptive that today, which is in your theme, as we speak, has almost become yesterday. Things are going so fast. We have seen across time how technological development have replaced human beings. As we speak now, I think there are about 50,000 people in the US will be losing their jobs because of technology. All the cashiers in the supermarkets are no longer required. That's only in the US, not even in the whole world. So I think if we want to think of the change in the workforce, we need to change our mindset ourselves and stop looking at traditional way of addressing issues. AI, ChatGPT is in its infancy stage, despite the fact that it's causing so much fear. Computer is becoming obsolete. we are talking of quantum computers now. Bits are becoming obsolete. We are talking of qubits. So the HR team that we have today in our organizations will very quickly be replaced by AI. AI is taking over human beings. AI, along with biological technology, is going to replace our own emotions. Interviews will be carried by AI.
It started already, I believe. Yes.
Issues pertaining to employees, to our human resources, will no longer be addressed by we, will be addressed by them. The AI. AI is taking over, whether we like it or not, and this is happening tomorrow. Tomorrow is tomorrow. I think real nuts and bolts will be addressing these issues to see how technology is going to change the whole vistas of human activities, not only in employment, but everywhere. I think unless we do this, whatever we discuss may very soon bring us to obsolescence. Thank you.
And our disappearance from the planet. Isn't it? Yes. Anyone wants to comment first? Yes, Manish.
Just a quick comment about that element. I wouldn't generalize so far. The fact that the way I would put it, the way I would frame it is, if ever, whatever job you do, if there's a formula to it, that is the nature of your work is formulaic, then there's a highly likely to be replaced by a machine, by a software, by AI. Okay, so that's the first perspective I wanted to share about that. I think in that sense, the nature of jobs, the way it's going to shift is whatever procedural element will be taken over by machines, by AI, and the human part of it will free up time for you to connect with people then, in a way. For example, counseling, when you need to sit and meet with someone, it's difficult for someone to open up to a machine. Yeah. So then, as a leader, as a manager, you have time to be able. It frees up your time to be able to connect at a human level.
Thank you. Telma, I know you had a question, and then we'll pass on to the gentleman with the green shirt. Quick, there's so many interventions in a spirit of fairness. Please, I'd ask you to not be more than 2 minutes in your intervention to give time to the panelists. Yes, Tam. Please do speak up. Introduce yourself quickly. Yes.
I come from a corporate business, and I left the corporate business for running my own company. My question to all the HR, we need, a small company, we can't afford, we don't have a budget of high salary. We can't afford HR, we can't afford so many things because at the bottom line is, the profit and survival. So my question is with the workforce nowadays, everyone needs and looking for a high salary. What happened to us, like small companies, where we can't afford, to pay people from university or graduates? Where do we stand? So in my case, what I'm ending up with is expats from Madagascar, from Bangladesh, from India, because they are cheap, and this is what I can afford right now. So that's my question to you all.
Anyone wants to start off? Mr. Pradeep, I can see your mind is working.
So in your business model, you still need workers, not only machines, but you need workers, be it operators or skilled or semi-skilled people. For remuneration, you have a strategy: either you match the market, you lead the market, or you lag the market. Matching the market basically means that to stay in business, you need to pay what your peers are paying. Exceed the market, you will be able also to retain your employees, grow, expand, and things like that. When you lag the market, basically you will be out of business. Now, in Mauritius, you have the national minimum wage. Basically, at the end of the day, you need, when you are conducting your business, at least to mirror your remuneration with the national minimum wage. But these days that only with national minimum wage you won't able to survive. You have explored the other possibility of getting people in. I'm the first one to support that view. Yes. If you fail to find local workforce, you need. But you need also to adjust evidence that it is costly. And many a times, for example, what you just need to figure out, if the package I'm paying to a foreign worker, be it the housing, the lodging, this and all the things, processing, and tomorrow I am sharing this with you, maybe there will be a review regarding this recruitment of foreign workers. The point for you to consider is, what if I have another value proposition for Mauritian workers, and not then you extend your net, your recruitment net. As of now, you're just looking at what you see, newspaper, vacancies. Start working with other sources whereby these were the things I'm trying to. Your job, I'm not belittling your job. Maybe the activity that you're doing, you can also find alternative sources of labor currently which has not been tapped. I know it is an uphill task for you, because it is here that the government authorities, also labor administrations, need to support you, give you all the assistance to finding, because the role of government is to be the facilitator, doing the matching. Businesses need people, unemployed people are sitting over there. Now, it boils down to policies, one saying now. If you have a policy of 15,000 rupees, you don't work, I'm going to support you this. And even if you pay 16,000, nobody is going to come to work. If we are getting retirement pensions, old age pensions, I'm not casting a blame on anybody. And if you have two parents already getting these pensions, why should I come and work? Because I'm being supported elsewhere. So it all has to do with policies. Holistic set of policies and policy coherence. Our employment policies need to be coherent with other developmental policies.
Absolutely. Let's hope that this cry that you make, actually, ce cri de comment dirais-je, de guerre, soit entendu. Sit tight, Thelma. What can I tell you in the meantime? Things will be better.
I will vouch for the gentleman over there.
Yes, you've been asking for a while now. Mr. Munchiram, this gentleman with a green sweatshirt actually has been waving for a while.
I am William, just joined the HR community since 2015. And one thing that I wanted to share is a political approach. I agree that ChatGPT is taking on, but we were only both, we did not raise our hands because we are not yet using ChatGPT. We still believe in the traditional way. And we are young, I guess. And one thing is that a lot of people use this the grass is greener over there. But you have to see in another perspective is that the grass didn't get green overnight. The guy over there, he grew this, he cultivated this, and what you are seeing is effort behind. And as we are still young, as Sharon is sharing, we had the opportunity as well to live for abroad, for Canada, for Australia, but we chose to stay here. And we have the key word that I saw is change. I think everyone knows be the change we want to see in the world. And I think people experience and employee experience on an HR perspective, I think this should be embedded in job descriptions of managers or departmental managers, because turnover will still be going, and then I think this is an important item that should be embedded in KPIs of departmental managers, because the onus of recruiting people cannot be only from HR, right? I'm sorry, guys. So that's
thank you for that. Yes, thank you. Before just passing on to Mr. Munchiram, I've had two ladies who've been desperate from the front to say something. Mrs. President, sorry for keeping you waiting. Please, the floor is yours. And then Rima, and then over to you, Mr. Munchiram. Yes.
So I'm Trinidad Chetty, so I'm the owner of Deco Design and also president of AMFT. So it's not really a question, it's more request for advice. I'm sure here there's lots of SMEs, I know my friends here, and we employ lots of women. So there's lots of challenges regarding women workforce. What would you advise today with what's happening? Like, we need to stay home and look after the children. We don't know what to do. Like today, it's raining, no school. You still need to go to work. What's your advice when you're working in a company and there's lots of women? What would you do to help these companies and allow them to retain these women? Because it's so easy to say, okay, I'm resigning because I have to be home. I have to look after my family, and then at the end of the day, we're not bringing any money home. So what would be your advice on that?
Who goes first?
We haven't much of work with it. What is it?
You want to go first?
I think the key element here is flexibility, right? That's the main element in terms of flexibility in your practices, not only for women but for different, in terms of diversity and inclusion, is how do you provide flexibility to your workforce in terms of what are their needs of the moment. So I'll outframe it in a way. Women is one category. If you look at youngsters, they are looking for a different kind of requirement. That is, they want to have more time to be able to spend time in nature or to exercise and so on and so forth. Is how, as an employer, do you provide that flexibility? At the same time, hold accountability in return. That is, yes, you can work from home. You have the facility to work from home as long as you're being able to deliver on your outcomes. I think there's a cry out here to employers to be able to change their practices, their policy. If you look at it, we have work from home available now as per the law, but still a lot of companies don't encourage it, don't practice it because of a lack of trust. That's the first element which needs to change from leaders, from managers, that if I've employed you and we build a relationship, I need to be able to trust you on that. So it starts with that.
Mary, I have been promoted to moderator.
Thank you so much. So as a woman, I want to say that it's about different people in your organization. It boils down to trust. Some people can work from home, others cannot. But as an employer, my question is always, if the lady tells me that I need to stay home because my child is sick, does her husband go to work? Exactly. And you know what? We can't promote equality if it's not equality in the home as well. So at Middlesex there's a lot of female workers, and if I have a policy to say, even let's take someone that is in a cleaning position. Can she do her work from home? No. But then I have a leave system in place. So it's also about give and take. It's not just about give. And I think that's the other thing that we need to have honest conversations about. As an employer and as an SME or as any employer, we can't just give. It's about trust. Can you work at home? If you cannot work from home, what is the alternative? I will never forget during COVID, I had an honest conversation with a colleague who was overwhelmed. She had 2 little ones that she had to take care of, and she had caring responsibilities for her mother. And I've said to her, how's your husband contributing to this situation? She said, no, he's got a very important job. He's not contributing. I said, okay. So would you like to take your leave at this point in time, because you've got a generous leave arrangement? And she said, no, I don't want to waste my leave on my family. Now, you know what, we laugh at that, but it's actually, so should we as an employer then waste our salary on your family? Because it's a give and take, and it's trust. And I think it's about setting those boundaries, When can we be flexible? When can we not be flexible? What do we expect? If we expect you to come in on a Saturday instead of a Thursday, are you willing to do so? And it goes back to the students. I can tell you it's not just about the workforce. we have a heavy rain warning in force, right? Students can't come to the campus. Then we say to them, there's a replacement class on Saturday, and they say, don't interfere. Do not interfere. So how do we set those rules from the very start? And I think if we set those rules, people know what their options are. And often I think it's just to have that conversation and say, what support do you need? Right, how do we give? How do you give? And let's have a fair and equal opportunity here. Because, and I'll say it because I'm a female. We can't expect differential treatment at work if we want the same pay. Because everyone has their own set of requirements, and that's why we need to look at flexibility, as Manu said. Young people that's busy with their studies, they need study leave, right? Older people need more, maybe sick leave. So how do we treat everyone fairly? Because that's the other thing that we need to realize. If we don't treat everyone equally and fairly, you are going to get discontent. And not just between managers and staff members, but also between staff members themselves.
Very quickly. I really acknowledge this question, and it is one of the most fundamental questions this morning.
Thank you.
Because this discussion is already being held at international level. In many countries now, the international community is looking at the issue of the indivisible work which women do at home. Household, caring, nursing role. And more societies and governments have to recognize this value. First thing. Second thing, we have also to recognize that when society places the burden of childbearing, child rearing on women only, this is the most discriminatory thing being done on women in terms of employment opportunities, career opportunities. So, for example, we at the level of Business Mauritius, speaking on behalf of businesses, we advocated for parental leave, flexibility, and all these things. Some of these issues we'll find that in our labor laws we have it, others still it is an uphill task to make policymakers accept these things. Now, the third thing, all the labor laws, be it in Mauritius, our labor laws are mirrored from what we see internationally. Yeah? We just copycat. Huh? All the labor laws were made on the premise that in the world of work, the man is the sole breadwinner. So now when women have entered massively the labor force, so there is a bit of fine-tuning and housekeeping to be done. But recognizing that nursing and caring roles can be shared, it's a question of mindset. The day society will start realizing it, then, for example, in terms of equality of treatment, opportunities for women, and then you will find this substantial aid. Mais still, il y a un travail. There is much work to be done.
Short-term solution, long-term solution.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Yes, okay, Rima, yes, you've been waiting.
Yes, thank you. So I'm Rima, talking from an entrepreneur's perspective. But maybe before talking about before saying what I wanted to say, I wanted to bounce back on what Mr. Darson has just said about the invisible work that women do and that is not really recognized and much less valued. I hope we'll reach a stage when that invisible work that all the women are doing at home, and sometimes men participate, sometimes men don't, but whether it's being done by women or whether it's being done by men, I think it's high time we start not only giving value to it, importance to it, but giving a monetary reward to it. The time when we'll start rewarding in terms of money those invisible work that take a lot of time at home in the upbringing and rearing of a child, I think that will be the first stepping stone towards that equity perspective that we want to bring forward between men and women, gender, and of course beyond gender and all those other differences. Now, coming back to what I wanted to say and what I wanted to share today, I think my takeaway from this session today, thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, for these very interesting perspectives. My takeaway from today is the fact that whether we admit it or not, whether we like it or not, enterprises today face a very high rate of staff turnover. That is the reality that we are having to deal with today. Because, as you rightly pointed out, employees are looking for meaningful work experiences. They spend some time in your enterprise, and at some point they want to look for something else. And at the employer's perspective, we find ourselves being very much constrained by the fact that we always need to recruit, induct the new employees. Then when they start delivering as per the performance indicators we want them to deliver in, they start leaving the company and going elsewhere for a better perspective. So when we think about all this, I tend to come to the conclusion that today the business model, our business models need to change. Thinking of employees as full-time employees working for us for a long period is something that we should demarcate from. We should start thinking as employees as short-term service providers who will come to our enterprise to provide a meaningful experience to our enterprise, right? And then we'll at some point leave and go for better experiences elsewhere. So maybe the time has come today for organizations or enterprises to start considering themselves not in silos as competitors against each other in individual business, but as an ecosystem where each can maybe contribute together in terms of the growth of their employees internally, not in terms of our own private businesses, but in terms of an ecosystem between the different players in the particular sector, in the particular industry, where employers can shift around and maybe grow from those experiences and bring growth to the enterprises from those experiences. Is that something you think would be feasible or something to be considered in the society, where we start thinking about not an enterprise, but an ecosystem of several enterprises in a particular industry? Would that bring a change? Because let's be realistic, that system of poaching, that system of high staff turnover is becoming a big constraint today for organizations. Thank you.
I can see a very thoughtful panel here. Thank you, Rima.
We've got an issue directly on non-compete. Because when you've got similar industries competing with one another, they're each trying to define themselves in one specific way and differentiate themselves from the market, and that's the capitalist model that we exist within. So if you're asking companies to pull employees, I think it's a practical standpoint of, what information are we going to bestow on that person, knowing that they're going to the competitor tomorrow.
It's just trade secrets.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, I like the concept, but I think in terms of practicalities, I couldn't say how.
I think also maybe that's where industry associations comes in, where you can share practices, where you can find solutions to common problems. But then you go back to your own organization and you face your own challenges, but you introduce those shared solutions that has been developed.
Maybe Rima is right, and I subscribe to this idea of multiple entries and multiple exits in the careers of people. And you will find that then the policymakers come into play. When people enter and leave, what happens when at a certain point in time they will leave forever, for example at the retirement level? If there is under provision of social protection, and this is what also green pastures. In many countries, you can contribute, or your contributions that you have made in your country can be carried forward over there. Because the whole thing is standard of living. At a certain point in your economic life, you get large sum of money, rewards, and then when you retire, maybe if you are not adequately protected, it becomes a problem. People moving around and not being covered. The idea of Rima is great, can be explored. We have currently the mechanism of private pensions. We have also the competitor PRGF. And one of the reasons of PRGF is this. Portability of pensions. Because prior to PRGF, there was portability of pensions, but there were so many other hurdles. So I can see, and these things can start at industry level also. Mais je vois toutes les mérites. I see the value, the merit of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rima. Okay, so unfortunately we'll be taking 3 last questions, and the 3 last people have already identified themselves. Mr. Munshiram, thank you for your patience.
Yeah.
Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm Maurice Info. I'm freelance HR consultant. I've got one experience in HR, but very interesting points have been made at the panel. But from my perspective, I see that why people leave. Are we treating the employees as total person or just as employees? We have to treat them as total persons. In my opinion, should be treated as total person. How many HR managers, for example, they know everything about the employee? How many brothers and sisters and family? They know. If you want to manage your people, you have to know everything about the person. And in many companies, you take a probation period of 1 year or 6 months. This is a period where the person has to get settled, to know about the company, to know about everything, the culture and everything. But you will see in many companies, just after 3 months, they fire the person. Without the person being trained, without the person having been settled properly in the company. And how many companies, they have communicated the vision, mission, statement, and values to the employee. If you ask an employee today, do you know the values or the mission, vision of the company? You don't know. So how they will work for the company? And how many companies, they listen? They listen to the people. They get views of the people before implementing a project, for example. Because they are the people who are on the spot. They are in the field, as we say. They know better. They know the problem. They know the solutions as well. So why don't we call for the solution?
Thank you.
Also the style of management. People leave also because style of management. I have an experience where somebody was working with us and he was leaving because he said he got double salary. After 3 days he came back. He said, no, I can't work with these people. Because the style of management, they are shouting every morning. So the style of management is very important. People leave because of that as well. And there was a survey carried out at the world level from 5 years ago. What is the engagement level at the world level? What was it? 13% only. So why? People leave, when you interview people, the first thing they will ask you, what is my career prospect? Where will I be in 5 years' time?
Thank you so much for this, Mr. Munshram. I think that's what you talk here is the hygiene factors, the basic treatment that we need to give to our people, treating them as human beings. Anyone wants to comment?
I think we can let the 3 questions.
Yes, okay, and then we'll take it up together. There was somebody, you had a question, yes.
I'm Mira, I've been working for 50 years in the HR department and progressively now I've just launched my own company, so I've launched Fabulous.mu.
You can't, can you speak louder or do you need the mic?
No, it's okay. Everyone's hear me.
So I'll just ask you to be a little bit brief because I do, I'm conscious of time. Yes.
Like we've been talking about change management culture and everything. I just wanted to know what's your take in how do we go about preventing burnout? We were talking about work-life integration, work-life balance. But then in this world where everybody's connected right now, we're always on the go, like you say, we're working constantly. So what is your strategies? How do you go about promoting and then preventing this sort of burnout and then mental health?
Plead to the panelists when you reply. Don't say work-life integration. Thank you for that. And we'll take the last question there from Wendai. Sorry, I'm bad with names.
Hello everyone, Natasha here. So from HR point of view, I'll just, not really a question, just a suggestion if policymakers and all the leaders here can just help out. I think what I'm talking with the local perspective, the workforce that we require today, the main issues we're facing with not the degree holders, not the graduates, But mostly, for example, we are having so many malls coming up in Mauritius with so many people required in the sales department, in the food courts and all. So I think we need to give value to those people, like we said, the career guidance for those who are not well versed with the academics. Maybe just promote such level of workforce that they won't come to the graduate level, they won't come to the diploma level, but maybe jobs like salesperson in shops and gardeners and the manual workforce in the factories, in other small businesses, because they don't feel their value, and that is where we are getting the most issue to recruit nowadays is there. For example, we take someone working in a retail sector, a salesperson. We don't really, as businesses, we don't really require someone with a marketing degree to work as a sales girl, as a sales boy in a shop, but we need at least a certain level of training for them, and that level is missing. I think if we could, from the 16 years of age, we should push them in that level, in that category, and then we would have that workforce. So thank you. With regards to AI, 2 minutes, I think it's up to strategic leaders to get the scope more out of humans. Let AI do their job, and let's bring up, expand the scope for human brain, the real intelligence to take over.
Thank you, Natasha. Thank you. Daniela is waving and threatening me just for 15 seconds. Can we accept that?
Yeah, I'm Daniela. I'm an anthropologist. I've got a 15-second question. What do you think about the 4 days work week for the management and for people working in the manufacturing sector also?
Somebody had to say it. Yes. So just to sum up, we've spoken about the basic HR function of towards employees by Mr. Munshiram. We've had a question on work-life balance, Natasha, and burnout, and we've had comments about the low-skilled workforce, and then the famous 4-day week. So who would like to start? You can choose a question to tackle as well.
So,
wouldn't you want to go last?
No, exactly, and it will be also a closing statement, no?
Yes, and then we'll lead on to the closing statement. Okay, yes, okay, let's do the closing. At the same time, there's a lot
for me to be my closing statement.
Great. Who would like to talk?
Tough questions.
I think it's very tough questions, which really leads me to my answer. I don't know. I don't think any one of us knows. I think it's wonderful that we have innovative approaches to looking at different work weeks. I think that could become a competitive advantage. And if the nature of the work allows it to happen, I think that's something that could actually attract talent. But you also need to look at the commercial viability of it, right? And the nature of the work. So I'm not in that sector, but I think it's interesting. Burnout, I think, is something that we see on a day-to-day basis. What does that mean? Does it mean that we think differently about how we go about life? In academia, we have sabbaticals. After 7 years of work, we take some time off to think and retrain and recenter who we are and what it is that we want to contribute. Again, I don't know how that is going to work for you. I think for me, at the end of the day, if someone asked me, if you run a campus, what's the thing that makes you lie awake at night? The answer is very simple, it's people. When I'm awake at night, very close to burnout, by the way, I think about individuals. I try and understand behavior. Being from a strategy perspective, working in change management, I try and understand what drives people. and I try and understand if I change my approach, because that's the only thing I can change, right? I can't change people. I can change my approach. So I'm thinking, if I change my approach towards that individual, will I have a different outcome? And I think if we realize that as leaders, the only thing that you can change is yourself. That's a hard thing to realize, but that's really the only thing that you can change is yourself. And if you change your own approach, will you have a different outcome? Maybe that's where we start. Because I don't think any one of us would have the answers to all of these very complex questions, because we have complex questions because humans are complex. So that's maybe where I'll end by saying I think the only thing I can change is myself. So I will end up like the gentleman saying, "Hi, my name is Marie. I work with humans and it's a challenge."
Thank you. Thank you, Mary. I'll segue to that about that where the thing that we can change the most is ourselves, right? But let me deep dive in a bit in terms of how do you change yourself? Because everyone talks about it, be the change, like Gandhi said, be the change you want to see. So I think there are three things that we can change in a very simple way. One is change the expectations that you have, right? So change your expectations about things, and very often we tend to set very high expectations in our minds, which we don't share with people. So really, and how you change that is don't guess the expectation, but rather ask what the person needs in front of you. So that's one way. The second thing is change your assumptions. And by that means clarify assumptions. Very often we hold assumptions in mind which we don't clarify, and then it creates dissonance, creates challenge. And the third thing we can change is change our perspectives on situations. Change perspectives means explore all the different options we have before taking a call. These are three things which we could change in a very simple way. Yeah. To come back to the question about burnout, I think also that it starts with being clear on what are your triggers and what are your limits in a way. Because burnout is your environment, but who is driving you to burnout? Not people around you, it's really your actions. So, and not knowing what's your limit, what are your triggers, and where you've overstepped on it. I have a personal story about that, having been a workaholic, where my late father, one of the last things he told me was, take your foot off the accelerator. So, and that's a very powerful advice I got from my father. He spent his 35 years working in a bank, working very hard, and that's his main life lesson was know when to take your foot off the accelerator.
I think for me what's really come through the discussions is that we've really divided the workforce into two spheres. The skilled, university educated working in the office, and those that are frontline working at the service. And so I think there is something there to be explored in the further HR cafes is, why do we make that distinction? And what it is that we need to either shift or change about our mindset and the way we talk about that type of work and engaging those workforces. Because in a way we're talking about one like they're cattle and the other two like they're shooting stars where, the sky's the limit. And I think the sky's the limit for everyone. I'm a coach. I believe in the potential of humanity. So that's really central to the discussion. So I think for me, my key takeaway and learning from the sharing from the audience and my fellow panelists is that there is such a broad spectrum of people that we need to be engaging with, and each one of them has their struggles and their challenges. And so it's about how do we make sure that all of them are brought along in that journey. And I think what Daniela has really tapped into there is the exciting concept of a 4-day week as a reality only for the talented stars that are working in the office. And that's not a reality for the rest of the people that are doing different styles of work that's possible for. And, all of our energy and focus is about making our lives better, but there's a group of people that aren't being looked after. So I think that's another question around, equity and diversity and inclusion that's a really big challenge. And much like Maria said, I don't know the answer.
Adila, can I ask a question? I didn't raise my hand.
I think in the interest of time and because we are maybe during networking you could take it up individually. I'm so sorry, Karuna.
We have a script which is already
You'll have some you'll book a room with them after the section.
No. demoted back to the
So yeah, I confirm I'm being demoted. I'm just a resource person.
Sorry.
So I'll come with the easiest question, which is the 4-day week. 4-day week. Currently, there is a proposal for 4-day week in the budget. It comes from Business Mauritius. Yes, because we have advocated this. And why? We are just preempting the future. We are just seeing what is written on the walls elsewhere. Because we can see this happening. By the way, are you aware that in UK there is the whole 4-week initiative? 100 companies are being subsidized by government over there. The European Union is working about it, World Bank and everybody. So one day it will reach our shores, so but be prepared for that. It has to do with the narrative of people need to find meaning in what they are doing. Work should be rewarding, challenging, but at the end of the day, when we work for our families, we work for development, this and that. So it's this wellness thing taking once again front seat. Burnout, one of the reasons is we are too much connected. So more and more you'll find organizations coming with the right to disconnect. I would strongly recommend you to use this as a tool, and you'll find more and more many organizations having sort of disclosure in note that this mail is not of importance, can be replied within so many hours and things like that. And please encourage people to take leave also. But as rightly pointed out by my colleagues over here, the only person who can activate the change is you. Nobody else can do that for you. To summarize, so I also agree that the job of HR is very, very tough and not so known, not so well credited. It is also because that the profession is a bit too shy to present itself as a bunch of professionals. The owners, or the owners, the one responsible for the global financial crisis, accountants, bankers, dealers, they have never been questioned, and they have been rehabilitated. Nobody today questions a banker.
Some finance people.
The profession over there is well regulated. But what to say about HR? For a minute, this is the nasty period of my intervention. I apologize for that.
I thought that was minutes.
I still have my 2 minutes. Okay. HR people, the profession, I think, need to professionalize, evidence-based. HR has to deal with many issues. You have a toolbox, and you are not supposed to find the solutions for everything. You can facilitate, and HR needs to have courageous conversations with management. And this is, for me, we have seen it, the missing block of many things. Not to say about the status of HR itself. Some of you have very nice officers, you have people reporting under you, you are accountable, you are transparent, but I can't vouch this for everybody. Even many HR people, HR professionals, they have difficulties of being accepted within their own organizations. You'll find, just see what is happening in Mauritius. You have certain trade unionists trying to lobby that the profession needs to have a council, there should be safeguards in the law, this is what the HR should be doing, should not be doing. We may be against it or for it, this is another thing. So at the end of the day, you have tough issues, the challenges are there, but these are not things that we have not witnessed in the past. Now, the prophecies that we are hearing that one day will disappear, one day work will disappear, or one day this will happen, they think it's okay. So my final word would be, make peace with your past. The future is a bit uncertain. Leave the present moment. To the best of your ability, do whatever you have to do, well, the benefit of everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. My key takeaway is make peace with yourself. Thank you. Thank Thank you very much, panel members. I'd like to invite the CEO of our holding group, Gibson and Hills, Nadim Safir, to come for the concluding remarks, please. Thank you. Would you like the microphone?
Yeah, I think so. And I should be standing, obviously. Fortunately or unfortunately, I don't think I have anything that can add value to what you've said so far since the morning. I mean, the themes that you've raised and the questions even from the audience was thought-provoking and very enriching. On my side, I was just thinking, you don't have the title here, but the part in workforce, the word force, is what disturbs me a lot. Because force has a connotation of pulling or pushing, while we are not doing that. Our main reflection is how to work together. I'll be just having a go at you, Manish. You referred to your soccer team. I'm a fan of the other one. We'll share some of that.
They're still in the Premiership?
Make peace with your past. Curiously, I've been managing businesses and people since 1994. I was 18 years old at that time. I'm 48 now. What has changed for me is effectively the management style. On that side, when I was 18 and managing people, my main role was to go and close down factories and tell people you've lost your job. I remember carrying a gun at 18 to tell people you've lost your job. And that's where I started building my idea of HR management. I'm not a theory guy. I'm not a formal guy. Look at me. I go to office like that, sometimes in shorts. And I've always been looking at those frameworks that you professionals put from a bird's eye view. I've never been in that framework. My style of management, and to take over from you, is effectively a football team, where every player has got a role to play. The one playing in defense will never score a goal. Probably, if you're Van Dijk, you can. Maguire scored an
On goal.
So, the idea, and
yes, please.
The idea is what you were talking about is when you join the workforce or you join your workplace, there are rules. And for me, that's typically that. If you're on the playfield, you've got that four corners. You can't go play beyond that. You're in defense, so you know what is expected from you. You won't be scoring. If you are a goal scorer, you've got your values for that. You will get bonuses. You will get rewards and acclamations because you've scored goals. But that doesn't mean that the defense player has got no worth on the playfield. So, one thing that I would suggest you to change is the word force in workforce. It's all about team play. And as long as we're taking employer and employee on two sides of a business, it will never work, whatever the answers you have for the question. So both sides should understand that we're playing the same game. At the end is either you win the championship or you're third or fourth, but you stay in the whole championship.
You're part of the team.
So it's not about two sides, it's one side, and we need to understand that. As long as we don't, we'll still have questions. You might have other sessions of HR Cafe. Good for you.
Much good.
Thank you.